All right, guys, we're going to get started. First, thank you for attending the webinar. My name is George Lewis. You might see Jim Cameron on the screen, but what we registered the webinar stuff through. But my name is George Lewis. I'm also joined here by Don, Patty, and Tony today, who are also sales representatives here at OptiMed Health Plans. We'd like to welcome you to our level-funded major medical webinar. We focus on our level-funded product, but we'll also get into other products that OptiMed has to offer during the presentation. If you have questions, there is like a question box that you can type stuff into that should be on your screen. If you want to go ahead and type in some questions during the presentation, I'll try to answer those questions at the end for you. If you have something specific or you want to talk about a specific group, at the end, you should have all the contact information for your rep, whether you're working with myself, Don, Patty, or Tony. You should have our contact information, but just in case you don't, I'll have it at the end of the presentation. If you have a specific group that you want to talk about or a specific situation, you can go ahead and reach out to them after the webinar is over. We should all be available after the webinar to talk. But let's get started. So with OptiMed, right, we're talking about our products, right? So today we're focusing on our major medical program, which is we don't do fully insured major medical. We just do self-insured major med on a level-funded platform. We also have things like gap programs, limited medical programs, dental and vision. We have HRA, HSAs when we're in conjunction with a major medical, but we can also do those types of services as far as benefit administrative services for groups if they want to set up an HRA with us, but they want to have a major medical plan through fully insured Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And we offer full service administration. If you have questions about the other products, we'll get really into gap a little bit when we're talking about our major medical program, just because of the fact that it can go hand in hand with it. But if you want more information on any of these other products, we also have, which is not listed as minimum essential coverage programs. If you still have groups that haven't got compliant, who are large employers under the eyes of the ACA and are offering minimum essential coverage to their full-time populations, feel free to also reach out about that to us as well. So let's talk about our self-funded major medical program, right? Why would a group or why would an employer group want to offer a self-funded program, right? And first and foremost, it's about savings, right? It's the opportunity to save money. If essentially when you're talking about self-funding, right, compared to a fully insured program, if we can come in with a self-funded program that would be equal to or the same quote unquote cost as a fully insured program, but the group has an opportunity to save money with favorable claims experience, why wouldn't a group want to look at a self-funding option compared to their current fully insured option? And we'll go into how it works in this presentation and the protections that we provide to the employer with reinsurance. But that's really it. It's a cost-saving mechanism, right? It's allowing the employer to be more creative in their benefit design, because maybe they have a benefit design that they really like, but it's not really being offered by any fully insured carriers. Like, for example, I would like to have a major medical plan design that has a $5,000 deductible, 100% thereafter, everything subjected to the deductible, but I don't want RX subjected to the deductible, right? I want there to be co-pays for that. Well, you might not be able to find that type of program in the fully insured marketplace. We can do that because it's a self-funded chassis. We can essentially virtually either A, duplicate the benefits that they have right now, meaning if they have a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, you send us the SBC for that plan, we can essentially almost virtually duplicate that plan design, but put it on a self-funded chassis, a level-funded chassis. Or you as a broker or the group might say, man, you know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I love this plan design, and they did away with it. Now, maybe they did away with it because of the ACA, and we would have to take a look at something like that because we want to make sure that, you know, these programs meet, you know, minimum value and everything that has to, you know, be attained with the ACA as far as compliance is concerned. But, you know, what I'm basically trying to say is that you can be as creative almost as you want to be with this type of program where you're fully insured marketplaces, you may not have that type of freedom. The good thing about OptiMed is, and I'll give you a little rundown about OptiMed, I mean, in case some of you aren't as familiar with us as some others on the call. OptiMed, United Group Programs are one and the same company. OptiMed is how we just brand ourselves in the marketplace. That's our like brand name. But United Group Programs has been in business for 47, I think 48 years now we're going on. We handle large government entities like the state of Florida. We do benefit administration work for. The state of Ohio, we do benefit administration work for. We handle large, Fortune type 5,000 companies and offering benefits and doing services for those types of companies to your mom and pop, Five Life, local business in Pennsylvania. And that's the good thing about OptiMed is that we are single source. Like we're not a general agency. We're a full TPA that is capable of administrating, and we do administrate essentially all the programs that we market. So whether it's our GAP program or our level funded program that we're talking about today, or an HSA or an HRA in conjunction with a major medical program, we're administrating that directly here. So claims, customer service, everything is handled here at OptiMed. We're not farming stuff out as far as customer service to other people. And once you really start working with us, what you'll find and what most brokers have found is that the service level that we try to provide to our clients, both you as a broker or an employer group, as far as I'm concerned, it's not even comparable to what other companies try to offer out there. We try to be proactive when it comes to situations that might occur. We want to make sure that when somebody calls us as far as an employee is concerned, that they're not going through 9 minutes of prompts in order to try to speak to somebody on the actual phone in our customer service department. We cross-train our customer service people so that they are actually claims people as well. So they actually understand the programs better and can better answer questions when they actually, when an employee actually does call in. So when you actually, and if you ever want to try it out, our number is 800-482-8770. You can try to call in as an employee and see how long it takes you. And our response times are very, very good. And you're going to get a live person on the phone that's going to answer your questions. And that is really unmatched a lot of times in what's out there as far as service is concerned with other either carriers or TPAs that are out there in the marketplace. And we pride ourselves on that. And we try to make sure that you as the broker are thrilled with working with us. So let's get a little bit deeper into, let's say, networks, right? Cigna is who we promote first and foremost because they are a national network. 860,000 providers. They offer very good savings on claims, and it's important when we're talking about a self-funded plan is to have good discounts on claims. So we do have out-of-network wraps for potential additional savings if you want. We work with other networks like First Health or PHCS if you want to do some type of wrapping. We also work with networks like Cofinity in certain marketplaces. Cofinity can be an excellent network, maybe second or third best in the state. So it all is regional. We do work with other regional networks. I don't want to get into all of them on this call. If you want to ask about a particular network, just call your representative and you can ask. But Cigna is our primary network because they are national and because they offer the best discounts in most cases. So as I was saying before, we can essentially duplicate current plan designs, or you can get creative with your own plan design, right? These are just some samples that we have up here. As far as sample plan designs, PPO1, PPO2, we have an HSA, you can do a EPO, you can have whatever kind of deductible, coinsurance. We normally don't do 50% coinsurance. Usually it's got to be a greater amount, but other than that, I mean, you want copays, you don't want copays, you want the prescription drugs subjected to deductible, we don't. Those types of things that we can get creative with, we just need to know when we quote it, And we'll get into what we need to quote in a few. But essentially, when you send us that SBC that you say, hey, I want to try to mimic this major medical program as best to your ability, we're going to go ahead and be able to accomplish that. The primary thing that we normally can't duplicate is pharmacy, oh my God, the name just went right out of my head. The formulary. So the formularies may vary from our program to, like, let's say Blue Cross or Aetna, just like Aetna's formulary might be different than Blue Cross's and Blue Shield's. So formulary is hard to duplicate and almost near impossible to duplicate. But as far as benefit structure and benefit design, we can essentially mimic almost anything that you have. So how does the self-funding mechanism work, right? Well, we offer 3 levels of protection for the employer, because most of the time when we start talking about self-funding, people start getting, or brokers, groups, they get a little anxious because when the term self-funding, all of a sudden they think liability per se, which there is, liability in a sense, but what we want to try to do is limit that liability down to where there really isn't much, if any, liability. And the way that we do that is we offer 3 different types of reinsurance protection: specific, aggregate, and we offer monthly accommodation. Now, when we talk about reinsurance, specific is going to protect against those large individual claims, or one individual who has a lot of large claims, right? The specific deductible is going to vary from group to group, right? So that's one of the questions I always get asked is, well, what is your spec? Well, it depends. If a group's got 300 people in it, we're probably not going to do a $20,000 spec. It's probably going to be about $100,000, $80,000. Conversely, if you bring me a group of 50, they're probably not going to have a $100,000 or $80,000 spec. We're probably looking more towards the $20,000 to $25,000 range, or maybe less. Usually the lowest would be like $15,000, but it ranges up to like a couple $100,000 as far as the deductible is concerned. And what that means is that if we get a large claim, so let's say, for example, someone has a heart attack, they're in the hospital for a few days, and the claim is for $150,000. What that specific deductible says is that, okay, if your specific deductible is $50,000 and the claim is $150,000, your deductible is $50,000, so you as the group are responsible for that $50,000, right? The reinsurer would pick up the additional $100,000 for that claim because that claim has hit their deductible. It could also be a combination where, say, George has a surgery, goes to the doctor, needs a follow-up surgery, and all of a sudden he's accumulated maybe not one claim that's over $50,000, but a lot of claims that add up to $150,000 over the course of the year. The same thing applies. The group would be responsible for George's $50,000 in claims, right? And they would pay that out of their pool, which we'll get into. And then the reinsurer would pick up that $100,000. So you don't have to worry about, well, what happens if somebody has a stroke and they're in the hospital for 3 months and it's $1 million claim or a $1.5 million claim. The specific reinsurance is unlimited. So whether the claim is $1.5 million, $2.5 million, premature twins, whatever the deductible is, the reinsurer is going to pick up the rest of that portion of that claim. So that offers, specific reinsurance is the most important, and that's what we talk about at first, the most important protection in a self-funded plan, because it's going to protect that group from 1, 2, 5 people. It does not matter because the spec is unlimited. You could have 5 people with $1 million claim. You're going to pay the $250,000, right? Essentially, the deductible would be the only thing that the group would be responsible for, and they're going to pay the reinsurer the rest of those. So it's an important structure in self-funding. I've seen other TPAs or companies try to market self-funded programs where they don't include specific reinsurance, and we feel that's dangerous. We will not do that type of arrangement. So in case you want to have that question where, do I have to have spec? Yes, we require that you have spec on our level funded programs, because just having the next form of protection, which is aggregate reinsurance on there, is not going to work. Even companies like potentially like a Walmart or, Google, probably, even though they're very large companies with tens of thousands of employees, may still have a spec reinsurance even on their self-funded programs. It might be $1 million spec, like $1 million deductible, but they still might have it just because they don't, again, want to be hit with those types of claims. So it's the most important type of reinsurance protection, so we won't go without it. The second form is aggregate, like I just spoke about. And what that's going to do is protect against the overall claim experience by the group over the course of a year, right? The aggregate reinsurance policy is normally $1 million. If you want more than that, you have to ask for it. I would want $2 million. I want $3 million. I don't think anybody's ever asked for more than 2 or 3. I don't know if we can get more than that anyway. But I guess it's just overkill. But what that is saying is that over the course of the year, right, we're going to determine what we call a minimum attachment point, right? So let's say that the group's minimum attachment point is $250,000, right? So what we're saying is that if the claims during the course of the entire year, right, your claim fund that we're going to set up, if the claims come in and it's more than that $250,000 over the course of the year, then the reinsurer is going to pick up the remaining claims after that $250,000 to $1 million. So obviously, if it was $250,000, it would probably be like a smaller group, like a 25 to 50 life case, something like that. But again, remember that has nothing to do with the specific reinsurance. So for example, in that one example I gave, employee goes to the hospital, has a stroke, heart attack, whatever, he's in there for 3 days, it's a $150,000 bill at the end of the day after the network discounts. If the spec reinsurance on that case was, or the spec deductible was $50,000, right, the reinsurer would pay that $100,000 over the 50. That doesn't come out of their $250,000 claim fund for the year. That's going to come directly from the reinsurer. Now, the 50 that they're responsible for, yes, that is part of their claim pooling. That 50 is going to come out of their 250, and now they have $200,000 left over for the rest of the year to pay any additional, claims. And if it goes over that $200,000, that's when the aggregate reinsurer is going to kick in and essentially start paying those claims after that point. I hope that makes sense to everyone, but it's two different types of reinsurance. There's both spec and ag, right? So we're protecting the employer from that very large claim or that one individual that has a lot of claims that add up to a large amount of money. But we're also going to protect the group over the course of the year and saying, when you give us, right, X, we're going to make sure that you don't have to pay anything more than X. And if you do, we have $1 million there in order to pay the remaining claims, all right? And remember, that $1 million, the reason why it's not unlimited is because it's aggregate over the course of the year. If that $1 million claim comes in, the group's still responsible only for $50,000. The specific reinsurer is going to pick up the rest of that $950,000. That doesn't apply to ag. So you go, oh, geez, now the ag's down to $50,000. No, that has nothing to do with ag. Ag is still a separate form of reinsurance protection that may or may not, even though the group had $1 million claim, they may or may not actually hit their aggregate reinsurance. They may even get a refund, which we'll talk about. And it's a hard concept to wrap your head around sometimes, and that's why we do webinars on these things. And if you want to have a further conversation with your group rep about it, but yes, a group could have $1 million claim, pay $50,000, right? We have $250 in the fund. We pay the $50 out. If the claims don't come to $200,000, the rest of them, let's say it only comes out to whatever, $100,000, 150 minus 250, that group would get a $100,000 refund even though they had $1 million claim. That is how the reinsurance protection works. It's two separate things. Monthly accommodation protects against a large amount of claims in a particular month, right? So for example, and it rarely, if ever, comes into play, but on occasion it will, where you have a group, let's say they start January 1st, and we're going to put $10,000 into their claim fund that month, right? Based off of how many people are enrolled and what they're putting in their claim fund. So right now, OptiMed United Group Programs got $10,000 in the fund. In January, we get $12,000 in claims, which is rare because of the fact that normally if you go to the doctor on January 4th, we're not going to see that bill till February, right? But there are, certain circumstances where they could have had a surgery on January 4th, and it's it was a $12,000 bill just for the surgery, and we got it in the month of January, right? And it doesn't hit their spec because their spec is $50,000. So we have to pay the provider $12 grand, but we only have 10 in our bank account for the group. What do we do? That's where monthly accommodation comes into play, where essentially the monthly accommodation would give us the $2,000, right, to go ahead and pay the claim. And then what would happen is in the following month, if they catch up, they take that $2,000 back, if that makes sense. So the second month, we're going to get another 10 grand from the group, right? But their claims the second month were only $5,000. So $12,000 in January, $5,000 for February, that's $17,000. We have $20,000 in the claim fund, right? Well, we have enough money to pay those claims. So what we're going to do is monthly accommodation is like an advancement, where we're going to advance the group the money, right? We're going to advance you $2,000 because we got to pay the claim. We can't not pay claims. So we're going to advance you that $2,000. But next month, if you fall back to favorable claim experience and now all of a sudden we have a surplus, we're going to get that $2,000 back in the monthly surplus in month 2. And it works that way throughout the course of the year. So that essentially, if the claim monies run short because we get a bunch of claims in, let's say, April, and now all of a sudden we run dry in the reserve, we'll advance that money so that the group can go ahead and we can pay those claims, and then we'll try to recoup that money through them depositing over the course of the year their claim fund money. We'll eventually take that money back once we have surplus again. If that doesn't make sense, again, reach out to your group representative after the fact, but that's how monthly accommodation would work. So when we talk about the whole level funded program, right, how does that all work, right? We talked about reinsurance protection and how it's important and why we need it, right? But how does the whole level funded program work, right? Well, essentially there's 3 components. There's your fixed costs, there's your claims, and then there's your potential refund, right? So what's in the fixed costs? Our administrative fee to administrate the program. And again, when we talk about Cigna, I know Cigna has their own level funded program, I believe, and that has nothing to do with this program. When we go out and we get the Cigna network, or we get a Cofinity or a PHES, we're essentially renting that network from them, administrating the plan directly here, and we're paying a fee, and that's where we say service and network, etc. We're paying a fee to them in order to gain access to the group for those networks, right? So don't be confused, and I do get some confusion sometimes. Well, oh, you're just marketing the Cigna. No, we're not. We have our own. We have a relationship with Cigna in the sense that we're going to rent their network, right? And you just can't walk in and get that. As far as TPAs are concerned, you have to have a certain level in order to gain access to things like the Cigna network, right? They have to be comfortable with you as a TPA. They have to do their due diligence on you. But essentially, all we're doing with the Cigna people is just renting their network so that we can essentially go ahead and provide that network to the employees for network access. And it's the same network of the fully insured Cigna program, and we're getting the same discounts. And that's why we use them. So it's our administrative fee, network access fees, right? And then broker commissions. When it comes to broker commissions, we would like it done on a PEPM basis, a per employee per month basis. So I would like $10 per employee per month. I would like $20 per employee per month. If you want it as a percentage, we'll give it to you as a percentage, but then it's still going to be a fixed per employee per month thing. So we'll just figure out what 5% of the total premium would be and then break that out into a PEPM basis, and that's what we're going to do. When it comes to self-funding and it comes to this type of program, it's so difficult to try to do percentages. It's so much simpler and easy when we go ahead and just do a PEPM basis on it. So when you're requesting a proposal as a broker, you always want to put in there what you want for commissions. I want 20, I want 30, I want 10, whatever the case may be. As long as it's not outrageous, we should be able to accommodate you. But those are your fixed costs, right? And that's the thing that's never going to change. Whether the employees use the plan or whether they use it a ton, right? Essentially what the fixed costs are is that is the lowest possible cost of the plan. When you add up all the fixed costs, right, that's the least amount. If no one ever goes to the doctor, if no employee ever uses the major medical program, essentially that's the minimum amount you're going to pay us is the fixed cost, right? What we do is then we add in the claim fund, right? And the employer is going to fund that through what we call a level funded premium, meaning that, let's say, for example, we come up with a $400 employee only rate, right? They're going to see a list bill just like they would from their fully insured carrier that says George Lowe, single, $400. But of that $400, let's say $150 is going to the fixed costs and $250 is going into a reserve. So what we do is we take that $250 times however many employees and we put that into the reserve. That's also how we set up the minimum attachment point that we talked about earlier, is that at initial enrollment, let's just make it easy. So let's just say you have that example of 250 going in and you had 10 employees. 10 times 250 would be 2,500. 2,500 times 12 months, right, would be $30,000. That's your minimum attachment point. So the aggregate reinsurance will kick in once you've hit $30,000 in claims for that group, that 10 life group. We would have $1 million over and above that once they've pooled more than 30,000 or had incurred more than $30,000 in claims that apply to the plan, right? Now, we call that the minimum attachment point because let's say they go from 10 people to 20 people. Well, now you have double the population. We're not going to keep our attachment point at $30,000, right? How can we? You got double the amount of people incurring double the amount of claims. So what we do is we raise the attachment point as your population grows. So if it grows from 10 to 20, we would raise the minimum attachment point to 30 to 60. And essentially, after $60,000 has been met, then the $1 million would kick in. So we base, again, the minimum attachment point off the initial enrollment. And but that's conversely, it works the opposite way because let's say the group goes from 10 to 5. Well, the reinsurance contract's not going to change. You still have to hit $30,000 in claims for those 5 people in order to have the reinsurer pick up the next 1 million. So therefore, if you have populations that fluctuate greatly, like I got 200 enrolled this month, and it could be at 150 the following month, then down to 100, then back up to 250, and then that's okay, but it's really when you have populations that you know are going to decline dramatically. Like January, they're going to have 250 people, but then all of a sudden in July, we are down to 50. That's a big problem, you know, because maybe they're seasonal. They only, you know, work 6 months out of the year. That could be a potential issue with a self-funded program. You might want to discuss that if you have that type of situation with a group, with one of our reps before you go ahead and maybe, you know, talk about a self-funded plan for that type of group. But normal groups don't have that situation, so you shouldn't run into it. So what we'll do is on a monthly basis or however often you want it, we'll generate a report that says, okay, here's how much money we put into the claim fund. Here's how many claims that we got. Here's what the total amount of those claims were. The network discounts took it down to X. Here's what we took out of the fund. And here's what's in there right now, right? So it's month 3. We've had $30,000 put into the claim fund. We've had $27,000 in claims that were discounted down by Cigna to $12,000, and we've paid $12,000 out of the fund. The employer's got $18,000 left in there. Now, run out, again, because this is a self-funded contract, and we're going to go back to the point of that provider, right? When we talk about monthly accommodation, you go to the doctor in January, we ain't going to see that claim probably in February, right? So when we're talking about this self-funded contract, let's assume a January to December 31st, right? That's your benefit plan here, right? Well, what happens if somebody goes to the doctor's on December 28th, right? We're not going to get that claim maybe until February. So if we just end the plan year on January 1st of the following year, we get that claim. What are we going to do with it, right? So that's what we say is run out. We normally set up run out on a 12-15 basis, but we can do a 12-18, a 12-24. I think 12-24 is a bit of a way overkill. But essentially what that means is that if we get the claim, let's say in February, we're going to go ahead and pay that claim, right? Even though it's inside of the contract year, the employee went December 27th, right? But we didn't receive the claim until February. It's still part of that claim year. So that's when the refund, right, happens. So once we've run out the claims, meaning we got all the December claims in, right, and that's why we do a 3-month, we'll wait January, February, and March to see what claims came in from, you know, before January 1st, right? We'll pay them out of the fund, and then we will go ahead and issue the refund. Now, the greatest part about our program is that we do not keep any of the funds, nor give an option to keep any of the funds. We don't say, well, if you want this rate, it's 25% of the refund. If you want this rate, it's 50%. It's always 100%. So any unused claim reserve, so in that example, it was $30,000 and, you know, there was 12, and so there's $18,000 left in their reserve, right? If that was April 1st of the following year, we're going to write a check to the group for that amount of money. Now, they can apply that refund to their next year's benefit program. You would probably want to talk to an accountant about that stuff as far as tax deductibility is concerned. We're not CPAs, but as far as I know, as long as you're applying it to benefits for the following year, you can keep the tax deductibility of that refund. And what that refund is going to do is help fund their program the following year. So now I got a refund of $50,000. I'm going to apply that $50,000 to the benefits of my employees. That means I'll have less out of pocket this year for my benefits than I did the previous year. And as you continue to roll on with favorable claims experience, that adds up. And that's the most important, you know, economic factor, right? And the reason why a group wants to do it, again, is cost savings. Why would I pay Blue Cross and Blue Shield $500,000 annually when I can pay OptiMed $500,000 a year, but have the opportunity to get $300,000 back? And if you don't get anything back, well, okay, it was a wash. Because let's say the claims experience wasn't favorable, right? And we kind of have an example of that here, where the annual premium was $1 million and the allocation into the administrative account was $350,000, which would mean the fixed costs. That would be your commissions, the administrative fee, the PPO access fees, and then we're going to put $650,000. So if the claims only come in at $350,000, we're going to give that group a $300,000 refund. But conversely, let's say we take in $1 million and we allocate the same amount of money. We put $350,000 towards fixed costs. We put $650,000 towards the claim reserve, and the claim payments come in at $750,000. The employer's refund is $0, but they don't owe money. They don't owe $100,000 because reinsurance protection would have picked up that $100,000 in claims. And again, because you're trying to save money, we want to limit the potential loss of the group, right? So when we talk about the self-funded program, it's a no-brainer, right? When it comes to, for me as a group, and I don't know, maybe groups are different, I don't know, but for me, if you tell me I can either pay Blue Cross and Blue Shield $1 million and I get nothing back, it's $1 million, and I don't have any possibility of getting a return, but I could give OptiMed and utilize the Cigna network and put $650,000 into my reserve, and if my claims only come in at $400,000, I can get potential of $250,000 back. Why wouldn't I do that? I would be silly not to do that. So what we try to do, and that's why we try to match benefit schedules, is because of the fact that if you have a Blue Cross and Blue Shield plan that you like, they like it, or an Aetna plan, whoever, UHC, and they like it, but we can match essentially the cost on an annual basis for that plan with a self-funded program through Cigna. I think that the employer group would be silly not to seriously consider it. I would jump all over it. Now, we also include some additional features. It's just not about the savings. We want to go, again, as I talked about our customer service and what we try to do for our brokers and for our clients, our groups, we want to go above and beyond. So we give an actuarial certification compliance letter saying, hey, this meets the actuarial value that's, under the law, under the ACA. We include telephonic doctor office visits, but we don't charge for them. The telephonic doctor office service that we use is iSelect. If you want more information about iSelect, we include iSelect on things like our GAP program, our limited benefit program. Some states we can't. I think there's a couple of weird states where we can't include telephonic doctor office visits. I think Arkansas is one. But it's free for the employees to use, and it's included in the premium when we quote. So, and that's an important feature to promote with a self-funded major medical program, because as the group, I'm responsible for the claims, right? So if George goes to the doctor's, right, and it's a $100 bill and he has a $20 copay, I'm billed as the employer for that $80. It's part of my plan, right? And everything counts. So if George just could have called a doctor and got a consultation over the phone because he thought he had strep throat, and they can prescribe medication over the telephone, or something simple that happened to me once. Back in the day, I got poison ivy working in my backyard. I had to make an appointment with my doctor that took me a day to get in. I had to take off at lunch, spend 2 hours there for him to look at me and say, yeah, you got poison ivy. He prescribed me some ointment and I think a steroid, and I was out the door. Then I had to go to the pharmacy, drop off the script, wait there for it, which I couldn't wait for because I was on my lunch hour, so I had to leave. Then I had to, on my way home, go back to the pharmacy, pick up my script, right, and then go home, when I could have called a doctor on the phone while I was at work and said, hey, I got poison ivy, can you prescribe me something for it, right? And got a consultation, and they could have called in a prescription to me, and I could have picked it up on my lunch hour and actually had some relief from the itching from 2 o'clock till 5. That would have been a much better situation for me. But again, for the employer, they're not getting those hit with those doctor office visit claims where they're going to be picking up potentially some of the costs of that. We also include a wellness nurse 9, an EAP program, patient advocacy. If somebody calls us and it's a large bill and they have a $4,000 deductible and it hit their $4,000 deductible, and we can try to call that provider and help negotiate it for them, right? Look up network providers for them. We have Spanish-speaking representatives as well as, English. So if a Spanish-speaking person calls us, we can try to help them locate a provider. We even have made appointments because they had difficulty communicating that to the provider, and set up appointments for the employee. It's all part of going the extra mile for us. But again, we try to communicate that to our brokers and to our groups as much as possible. Hey, man, if your employees have problems, have them give us a call. We will help. We could do Section 125 POP administration. We can add an additional flex spending, like a full cafeteria program to the major medical plan as well. If you want things like flexible spending account, like cafeteria plan administration, you want HRA administration, that kind of stuff, let us know ahead of time when we go to quote, because sometimes there are small additional costs for something like that. We normally charge a few dollars per employee per month in order to administrate additional things like that. So like I said, just give us a heads up when you quote it that you'd like us to look at those options for you. We also have website and online administration portal. So when you go onto our website, employees can log in, create a username and password for themselves to view information. Employers can set up and brokers can set it up so that they can do ads and terms in the system. You can't pay your bill through the system. But you essentially can look at group information, change addresses, adds and terms, stuff like that, minor maintenance on it. They can also see, like I said, for employees, they can see claim information, that kind of thing. But it's a nice little additional feature. We can set up like a small, like, 4-page website for the group as well. It's a simple, real basic, like 4-page website where it's like, it has the login button, the login to the portal. It's got like a claim form button. It has a contact us button. It'll have the policy on there. When we issue the welcome kit, we give the web address so that they can go get their policy if they or their certificate if they want. Employees can order ID cards through the portal, that kind of thing. So we wanted to make sure technology-wise that we had the things that for groups that are going to want to look at this option for us or with us, that we have the technology behind it to make it easy and convenient for them to administrate it on their end. Now, I said before, we have gap programs, flexible spending, FSAs, HRAs, HSAs. So like I said, if you want us, HSA is not that essentially big of a deal. I mean, we're talking about bank accounts, right? If you want an HSA plan design, we can set up the bank account information for the group, that kind of stuff, and the employees. HRA administration is the same thing. Because we're the primary provider, or I should say the primary insurer, when we get the claim from the provider, if they have an HRA and it's an eligible expense on their HRA, we're just going to pay it out of their HRA. We're not going to file like, oh, this is subjected to your deductible. File an HRA claim with us if you want to go ahead and have this covered under your HRA. We're just going to pay it out of their HRA. So that's the good thing about us is seamless integration, right? So if you want to institute an HRA, but you don't want to have to worry about cards and people misusing the cards, or what if some pharmacy accidentally swipes something that shouldn't be, applicable to the HRA, like somebody's trying to buy food or over-the-counter medications and they're able to do it through their HRA bank account, the credit card that you set up. You eliminate all those issues because with our HRA administration, when we get the claim, we're going to know whether it was eligible or not, and you can tell us how you want the HRA set up. You could say, I only want it to cover inpatient services only for employees only up to $2,000 annually. I want it to cover only outpatient surgical procedures up to $1,000 for singles, $2,000 for family. I mean, again, flexibility and creativity is part of what we try to market. So if you want a group that gets very specific and says, I wouldn't mind wanting to cover this, prescription drugs. So let's say the owner of the company goes, oh yeah, my kid has XYZ script and I know it costs a bunch of money, right? Is that on the formulary? So let's say maybe it's not on our formulary, or let's say it's just like a non-preferred brand and it's going to cost a lot of money. We can set up an HRA with the group that says specifically we'll only cover XYZ drug for dependents, right? Now that means any dependent in the group that has XYZ, RX would essentially be eligible for reimbursement, but most likely the only person is going to be the owner's kid who's going to get reimbursement for that. That's, again, the type of flexibility that we have with what we do. But again, it has to apply to the entire group. We can't say that George Lewis's scripts are covered under the HRA and no one else's. Like, it's got to be the entire group. But more importantly, what we want to talk about is our gap programs, because the concept of a self-funded program, right? The group wants the highest deductible for their employees as possible, right? Why? Because again, they're responsible for the claims. So if I have a group that has a $1,000 deductible 100% plan thereafter, and I have the exact same duplicate group that has a $6,000 deductible 100% their plan, obviously I'm going to incur more claims on that $1,000 deductible, right? When I mean claims, I'm going to incur more dollars, right, that has to be paid out of the employer's pocket. We're going to get the same amount of claims, but let's say we have $50,000 in claims. Well, if there's a $6,000 deductible in front of that, I only paid $44,000, right? If it's a $1,000 deductible, I paid $49,000. So the employer wants the largest deductible that they can possibly get with keeping compliant with the ACA because they're responsible for the claims. I don't want to pay the first $6,850 worth of claims. I want to pay them after because most people aren't going to incur more than $6,850 in claims. But here's my problem. My employees don't want a $6,850 plan, right? I need to offer something that's better to my employees because they're used to something better. That's where our gap plans can come into play in getting creative. We have now, what is it, like 6 different gap programs that we have access to that have either first dollar coverage, a deductible. Some have 2 benefits, inpatient and out. Some have 1 benefit. State availability varies with gap because it's a fully insured program. But that's the key. It's a fully insured program. So what the concept is that you have a base and a buyout. Your base plan would be the $6,850 deductible, 100% thereafter program, right? And if you want that, Mr. Employee, it's $100 a month for employee-only coverage, right? But if you want a better program, well, what OptiMed does is they have this, what they call gap program, and we put these 2 things together. So essentially, when you go to the doctors, they'll know if it's eligible under the gap because, again, we administrate everything. We administrate the gap program and the major medical. So if somebody submits a claim to us as a primary, if they have gap, we're going to pay it out of the gap. If it's not ineligible or if it's subjected to deductible or co-insurance under the major medical program with us, but they have our gap plan with us, we would pay that claim under their gap program, right? But what it can allow you to do is get real flexible. So let's say, for example, you say, George, I would like a plan that has a $500 deductible up front, then pays basically everything thereafter. Depending on the state, we have a gap program that could do that because I have a gap program that has a $500 deductible up front, then it has a $6,350 benefit. And it'll pay inpatient or outpatient services up to $6,350. If the max out of pocket is $6,850, then I've accomplished that $500 deductible. Now, it doesn't cover RX, but we can fix those things in the self-funded plan because it's a self-funded plan. We can just make RX not subjected to deductible, right? So that the major medical plan will pay for the RX stuff, but the gap program will pick up everything else. So now, what I've done is accomplished a base buyout program where the base plan is a $6,850 deductible. You're responsible for everything, and it's $100 a month. And now I have a plan that's a $500 deductible, 100% thereafter plan. And what the cost of the buy-up is the cost of the gap. So if the gap rate for the employee only on that program is, let's say, $80 a month, well, then, yeah, if you want the buy-up program, if you want the $500 deductible program, well, then it's $180. And because it's fully insured, the employer is not incurring the claims on the gap. So it doesn't matter to the employer. I don't care if the employees use the gap if they don't use the gap. And let's say they do use the gap. Let's say they use it a lot. Let's say they incur a bunch of claims. In year 2, we come back and say, man, there's people really utilize that gap program. Honestly, we're going to have to kick the rates up about 10% on it. Okay. Who cares? Because next year with open enrollment, because we had a $6,850 deductible up front on the major medical program, the major medical is not getting any rate increase because, again, most people aren't going to use $6,850 in benefits for the year. So the major medical plan had good experience. You got a refund, right? But the gap program is going to get a 10% hit. Well, guess what? Next year, it's, well, if you want the buy-up program, instead of $180, it's going to be $188 because 10% hit to the employee-only rate of $80 would be $88 the second year. Who cares? If people are going to walk out of an enrollment meeting because you're charging them $8 more a month for their buy-up program, I don't think anybody's going to be rioting over that. And that's what we can accomplish because we administrate everything here and we have all these different types of gap programs. So you could say, that's way too benefit rich. I want $1,000 or $2,000. Then it'll pay X after that. Okay. We basically can, again, creativity and 1,000 different ways to slice up the pie is what we bring to the table. You should tell your group rep, this is what they would want, this is what they have now, this is what they would like, how would you go about doing this? And then again, depending on states, because not every gap plan is approved in every state. We're in about 35 different states. With our gap programs, one variance of the other. You know, in some states we might only have one plan. Like in California, we only have one approved. But then in Texas, we have 6 approved. So it depends on where you're located. But we have options, right? And we can go over those options with you. Now, as far as gap plans in general, gap plans are by far the most popular program that we offer. And you really want to start talking more about your group representative, whether it's me or Don, Patty, or Tony. You really want to start talking about gap because that is the future. And we have brokers that have embraced this and we have experienced 400% growth year after year with our gap program. And it's because it's catching on more and more and more because brokers are starting to realize, like, wow, I can really accomplish this and do this, whether it's with us or some fully insured program like the Blues. You know, I got a 20% rate increase. The group has a $1,000 deductible 100% plan, and they got a 20% rate increase. What do? Well, go get a major medical plan that has a higher deductible, higher out of pocket, fill in the void for the employee with the gap program, and hopefully the differential in the premium, you know, our gap premium plus the new premium for the major medical program with the higher deductible and coinsurance is less money than their original one, right? And it doesn't work all the time, right? But it works a lot of the time. You know, where it doesn't work is that if you go from $1,000, I just had one of these. They went from $1,000 deductible, they went and got pricing. If they went to a $5,000 deductible, the price differential was $40 on an employee-only rate. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you about that. Like, I think that's weird that the carrier had something that, you know, low of a spread in the price differential. But that does happen. But most of the time, it's like $100 or $150. Could be $200, right? Now you fill that in with a $50 gap premium. That's how you save money. And year after year, what happens is they get another rate increase from their major medical company, and it keeps sliding, and they keep adding more gap benefits. So, okay, we filled in a hole of $2,000 last year. We're going to have to move the major medical, you know, deductible and coinsurance up again. So can you give us a little bit higher gap benefit year 2? Sure. We'll take it from a 3 to a 4 or 4 to a 5, whatever. And that's normally how it works. And guess what? Once you put the gap plan in place, the employees will value their gap plan more than they will value the major medical program. Because once you hit $5,000 deductible, where everything's subjected to the deductible, basically, 90% of that population is not going to incur more than $5,000 in claims over the year. So what happens is that the major medical plan pays nothing ever. Every time they go to the doctor for something simple, they got to pay out of pocket. I got to go to the doctor's got to pay $100 out of my pocket. I got to go get a scrub, I had to pay out of pocket for that. I had to go get a test, I had to pay $50 for that. I had to go get a lab work, and they wanted $150 for it, right? All those things could be eligible expenses under our gap programs. So guess who the employees used to pay? OptiMed's the one that pays. I had to have an MRI. It was going to cost me $1,800. OptiMed came in and paid the whole stinking thing. Thank God I had that. And guess what happens? That employee that it happens to talks to other employees in the group. They go, man, really? Yeah. And all of a sudden, the OptiMed program becomes more important than the major. Who cares what the major medical is? As long as my providers are in network, I don't care. What I care about is whether or not OptiMed, who's the only one that pays anything for me, is going to be there for me in case I need an MRI or in case I need a surgery. Are they going to be there to fill in some of this $5,000 gigantic hole that I have to fill on this major medical program? So if you aren't selling gap now and you really haven't dove into that world, you really should. And whether you like HSAs or HRAs or whatever the case may be, when you're looking at those types of situations with renewals, gap's just another option, but it allows you more creativity. It allows you to put more of the onus on the employees. With HSAs, a lot of times employees don't have what I call quote unquote disposable income to throw $100 a month into the HSA account so that they can have $1,200 for the year. Yeah, they can roll it over, but for $100 a month, I mean, you could get like a $6,000 gap program that would pay the whole thing. If you got hospitalized for 3 days and you wind up with a $6,000 bill, it would cover the whole thing. So yeah, I don't get to roll it over, but you know what? I'd rather have that. Or we could do a $50 gap program and cover most of it, right? Have $3,000 there to cover it. Well, I'd rather pay $50 than $100. It's $50 more in my pocket. and I'll pay $50 OptiMed. If anything really happens to me, I'm going to have most of that hole filled up, and I don't anticipate it happening, but, you know, it's there to help me, right? That's the concept of gap. So, as I said, you really want to start talking to your group representatives here about that concept, and I don't care if you work for companies that have 10,000 employees or more, or whether you work in the 5 Life group world, it works. It's the same concept every single time. Now, we talk about quoting. In order to quote, you need the OptiMed RFP form. If you don't have it, email your representative and they can shoot it over to you. It's a simple PDF. It's fillable. You just type in the information, click save. You don't need to sign. I think there's a signature thing. I don't know if you really need to sign it. You can just type your name in there. You want to email that along with your census. We need date of birth, gender, medical tiers for all the employees, right, currently enrolled in the group major medical program. So when we're talking about level funded, right, we need to know who is on the current group major medical program. If they don't have 25 or more, essentially they are a virgin group to us, and we need 25 people enrolled in order to write a self-funded case. We don't, I know there's companies out there that'll write down to like 5, 10 lives with self-funded. We don't do that. We need 25 or more enrolled. So if you have 23 enrolled in the group major medical program right now, we consider that to be a virgin group, which with virgin groups, we do require individual health questionnaires. Now, for most groups, we do not need individual health questionnaires. On occasion, now to quote it, as long as you have 25 or more on the plan, right now, the major medical program, we don't need individual health questionnaires. Most of our stop loss carriers that we work with, and we work with about, I think now we're working with 6 or 7. Oh, and by the way, Cigna is also one of those stop loss carriers. We may be, and I don't know of any others, we may be the only third-party administrator out there that actually can go to Cigna and quote them just for stop loss. Again, it's not their program. They would be the reinsurer on the program. Now, they require 100 lives or more enrolled in order for us to quote stop loss with them. But I think that gives you a little bit of indication of, you know, their view of OptiMed and what we've, you know, accomplished with them. And essentially for them to have the trust in us to go ahead and quote their stop loss reinsurance with us, I think speaks volumes to us. We work with, again, like another 5 or 6 other different stop loss carriers. But most of the time, you're not going to need individual health questionnaires. I don't want to say all the time, because if it's a virgin group, we're definitely going to need it. And if it's a small group, under 100, so between 25 and 100, the underwriter may come back and say, you know what, I'm not confident with this group based off of demographics or whatever the heck they're looking at. I want to go ahead and I want individual questionnaires from the employees. And then when I get them, we'll either re-rate it or hold rates or lower rates, whatever the case may be. But at least we'll be able to get you an initial proposal. It'll be more illustrative because we're going to need individual health questionnaires, and they could, depending on what the individual questionnaires say, they could, you know, hike up the rates or decline and pull the quote. I don't necessarily look at that as a bad thing, just because of the fact that it avoids problems later on down the road. Again, this is self-funding. So if I have a group of 30 and I'm not confident that I have a fairly good population or a healthy population, I don't know if I would want to look at them for self-funding anyway, but if I had to get individual health questionnaires and you're willing to go get them, and I found out that, you know, George's, you know, child has leukemia and he's in the hospital right now and it's going to be $1 million, or, you know, has $1 million claim coming in, or a stage 4 cancer, I don't know if I would want to necessarily quote that group, right, for a self-funded type platform. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but normally we do not require them or ask for them. If the group's got over 100, we're going to have experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be like full experience like a TPA, self-funded TPA can provide. It could be the group experience where, you know, we took an X amount of premium, we took in, you know, there was X amount of claims. They would want to know if there's any shop claims, that kind of stuff. But there has to be, if you have over 100, we have to have some type of experience. I had a group that had, I think, 500 people enrolled in a community rated program, and they could not get experience from the carrier, and I could not quote it. which was a shame because their rates were outrageous. And we probably could have saved the group a ton of money by going to a self-funded platform. And I couldn't do it because I could not get experience. No one will look at a group over 100 without some type of experience on them. It's just too much liability. But other than that, as you see on the screen, we need the last 2 years of renewals with rates. So I need the current rates and the renewal rates for the last couple of years. And that's it. So quoting is very easy. I mean, census, RFP form, the last 2 years of renewals. If they got over 100, send the experience. If not, then you don't need to send anything else other than that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll turn around and we'll get you a proposal. And on those smaller groups, you might be required to get individual health questionnaires, but I'd say 9 out of 10 times you won't. But we always want to be upfront with our broker partners. And we don't want to say, oh, no, you'll never get it, and then turn around and, you know, the 10th time happens to be you and go, oh, yeah, I need individual health questionnaires. So just know that it may happen, right, but most likely will not. And at least you can see numbers, you know, and potentially what you could get with a proposal. It doesn't hurt to get a proposal on the group. As I said, commissions are flexible. We want them on a PEPM basis. Just let us know what you want. Ask for a brochure or state availability when you email your rep. For the self-funded program, I believe we're in 46 states. I don't think we do. The state of Washington, Hawaii, Alaska are out, and I think there might be one more state that we don't do self-funded major medical in. But New York's fine, Jersey, the whole East Coast is pretty good. It might be one, like maybe New Hampshire or something like that. But you can ask, because I don't run into it very often, that's why. You can ask your group rep for a state availability catalog and ask them, you know, where the product is available. Again, with GAP, you would also want to ask what's available because different GAP programs are different in each state. Limited medical, same thing. I'm going to open it up to questions and answers. Let me see what's in the question box. I'm sure there's a few. All right. Yeah, I mean, you can have a plan that has 2 times the deductible for, let's say, family, or 3 times. Again, we'll do whatever. We'll mimic what you have now if you send us at SPC, or just tell us what you want. To have something like a $5,000 deductible, let's say, for hospitalization and a $1,000 deductible for outpatient procedures might be difficult. I would, whatchamacallit, I could have to check into something like that. Email your group rep after the fact with that question, see what we can do. That's a little odd. Normally, if it's it's deductible for everything. Normally, it's excluded from deductible. So, for example, it's a $5,000 deductible that applies to everything, but it doesn't apply to RX, or it doesn't apply to this, right? It doesn't apply to physician office visits. Like, we want we want even RX to apply to deductible, but not physician office visits. We want a $20 copay for physician office visits. But having 2 different deductibles, I think that would be hard, and I don't know if we could accomplish that. That might be one thing that we couldn't do. PBM is Cigna. If we're using the Cigna network, we would use Cigna as the PBM. We also we're working with other networks. We use CVS, and I think we have a couple other PBMs, but mostly I think it goes through CVS if we're not using the Cigna network. If you are a GA, yes, you could give me a call about that. We love to work with you. We work with a lot of different general agencies throughout the country. Group size is 25. If you would like a copy of the slides, email us. Email your group rep. I'll show you the email addresses if you don't have your group rep's contact information. What are the issues? Well, the question is, if 1 million, let's say there's 1 million in ag and there's $1.5 million more in claim hits, then yes. That's why we don't say that there's absolutely no additional liability. Technically, yes. If, let's say, the claim reserve was $300,000 for the year and there's a $1 million policy behind it, that's $1.3 million. If the claims came in at $1.5 million, then yes, the employer would be responsible for that other $200,000. It happens so rarely, I don't know if we've ever had a case of it, ever. And because of the fact that if they expect the claims, let's say they expect the claims to come in at $300,000, that's not what you're going to put into the claim reserve. There's a corridor there of 25%, right? So they're going to put somewhere close to $400,000 in that claim reserve. So, and again, spec claims don't go towards ag. So again, like $1 million claim, if the spec deductible is $50,000, the spec reinsurer is paying $950,000. The employer would pay $50,000, right? So you're talking about a group that would have to have a ton of individuals inside of the group, meaning like 80 to 90% of them going over whatever their deductible or out-of-pocket max would be for the year, and accumulating so many individual small amounts that they would never hit the spec deductible, but would somehow hit the aggregate. And I've been doing this for I've been with OptiMed for 7 years, right, doing this. I've seen groups come across my desk for 7 years, and thousands of them. Probably maybe even the tens of thousands. And most of the times when a broker's coming to me and it's a difficult situation with a renewal or a difficult group, it's because 1 or 2 people are blowing up the plan. It's not because they have a group of 100 and 90 of them go out and get surgeries and this and that would add up to be like $20,000 in spend, and you know, it's causing problems with the group. It's normally George had a heart attack and had $1 million claim. John went out and was skiing, had an accident and broke his legs in 3 places and had an ER claim of $100,000. Those are the types of claims that blow up the plan. Most of the people inside of a group, and if it's not that situation, then you know. I mean, if a group's that bad where 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 people have some health conditions that are constantly going to the doctors, you're going to know that. I mean, pretty upfront. They're going to be receiving rate increases pretty heftily over the period of time. They're probably just not the best group for a self-insured program. If you want more than $1 million, we can ask for $2 million. I don't know if it's really necessary, just because we put so much money into the claim reserve when we're doing it. I don't think you would ever get past $1 million, but we do offer it in case. I think $2 million would be real overkill. We cannot go below 25. So 25 enrolled, not eligible, enrolled is the lowest that we can go down to. As far as retirees, you could send it over. So for example, you have a group that has like 70 people and 20 are retirees. I'll be honest with you, with self-funded plans, I don't like retirees. I'm going to be honest with you, because normally they're up there in age, right? That's why they're retiring, and those are the people that incur claims, right? That's why age-banded rates on our GAP program, a person under the age of 40 might be paying $50. A person over the age of 50 is probably going to be paying $80 or $90. So we can take a look at it. I don't know what kind of pricing we would get on it, but we can take a look at it. I think that is the last question. I will go to the page with all the contact info. This is all your contact info. So there's me, George Lose, Tony, Patty, and Don. There's our extensions and our email. I'll leave this up for you guys so you can write it down. I want to thank everybody who attended the webinar. Thank you for your time today. If you have questions, like I said before, feel free to reach out to us. Reach out to your group rep after the presentation is over if you want to talk about a particular group. But thanks again, and look forward to talking to you guys in the future.